Do you think college football is finally going to get a commissioner now? I do. I really think this. Not tomorrow, but I really do think this. If you're professionalizing everything else about college football, why not that? The NFL's got a commissioner. Major League Baseball's got one. NBA's got one. It's the only thing, actually, that I haven't heard suggested lately. Everybody's talking about the professionalization of every other aspect of the sport. Are we going to get a commissioner? So the short answer is it should be me. Let's just be real. But let's not name names. Let's just talk about the concept here. This is going to come. I think this is going to come. If you talk about the NFL, which for better or for worse, we're allegedly modeling the entire game after now. If you talk about the NFL, sure, you got the AFC, you got the NFC, but if I were to ask you this question, who runs the NFL? You very quickly tell me, well, you got Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner, and he answers to an executive committee, and that committee is made up of the 32 team owners. That's who Roger Goodell answers to. That's the power structure. If I were to ask you who runs college football, I can't even get the sentence out. If I were to ask you who runs college football, what would you say? You just yell at each other for an hour, and then we would leave no closer to an answer than when we first got here. No one knows who runs college football. Some people say Greg Sankey and the conference commissioners do. Some people say TV executives do. Some people say the college football playoff does. Some people say bowl executives do. No one knows. You're all right and you're all wrong. No one knows. There is not a face of leadership on this sport. Dare I suggest that's the root of a lot of our issues. You know? Yeah, leadership, kind of an important thing. How will it be structured, though? If we were to get a commissioner in this sport, forget about who it would be for a second. We can speculate on that all day. Man, that word's been used a lot tonight. I think the way it would be structured is you would have to figure out what your version in college football of your executive committee would be. So whereas in the NFL it's the team owners, in college football, would it be your 10 conference commissioners? Would it be university presidents? Would it be a combination of the two? Because if you had a commissioner, they're going to answer to a board somehow, some way. So I think that would probably be the way it's structured. But then you get around to who it would be. And if it's not me, and to be clear, it should be, but if it wasn't me, I think the name could very much come out of left field. I think the popular choices are going to be like, of course, the current commissioners. You could get Greg Sankey from the SEC. You'll have a lot of names you know, but I also think there could be names that you've never heard of that don't really even need to be mentioned because they wouldn't mean anything to you. But they need people, or they need a person who can speak the language of NIL and just really the current language of the game. They need someone, I think, who is fluent in the world of media, not just media rights, but the mechanisms in the world of media now. They need to understand how things are different today than they were 10 years ago. They need to understand how valuable access to streaming is, but also maybe how that chokes off a little bit of the lifeblood of your conference. All of those things are very basic to people who speak that language, and it sounds like Portuguese to people who don't. You need someone who can delve into that. You need someone who is forward-thinking regarding player rights. Because what is going to be in the very near future, especially when you sign these lucrative media deals, is probably some form of revenue sharing. And I don't know exactly how that's structured. I don't know if you have collective bargaining. I don't know if you have the ability to unionize. I don't know if you're calling a player an employee. All that stuff has to be figured out. That is a commissioner's job, or at least part of it. So I think they need to be really, really well versed in that field. They also, though, on top of it all, hopefully, need to understand what the main thing is. And the main thing is you. You're the one, not players, not conference commissioners. You're the one that makes the product so valuable. We talk about this all the time here. You could have the most lucrative TV deal that you could ever want. You can have the biggest stadiums. You can have the shiniest helmets. You can have the best players. If the stands are empty, if the TV's not on, it doesn't matter. It's water polo. It could exist, but it's not a revenue-generating sport. And so the one thing that's not being done nearly enough right now is people shutting their mouth and listening to what their audience says. One of the things that I pride myself on with this show is I constantly interact with you guys. Number one, it's because I'd much rather talk to you than management. But number two, I get that we're not here if you're not here. I understand that. Look at the studio. All this would be irrelevant if you didn't watch. Do people who run college football understand that about you? Some of them I would say yes. Far more I would say no. or either they kind of would give you a talking point, focus group to answer, but really behind closed doors, they say they'll show up no matter what. They're not going to leave at this point. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I hope at the very least someone understands the main thing. And then there's this other word that's dirty in nature, politics. Do you understand how to keep politicians out of the game? Do you understand how to take care of your own business and keep your own house in order so that you don't have people with 14 different alternate agendas in Washington looking down at you and saying, we'll take that, thank you, please keep that away from here. I know there's been swinging differences of opinion and philosophy out there about whether you need federal government intervention or not. We've gone back and forth on this show. My current modus operandi is let's just hiss at that and let's X our fingers in front of it. No. So get me a commissioner, if you do, that understands how to take care of business long before those folks ever have to get involved. I do think we're going to have a college football commissioner. I think it'll probably happen after this dust settles, but I certainly think that enough people look at the current mess we have and understand it's due to a lack of leadership. Someone's got to shoulder the burden. It's going to be a heat position. You better find someone who doesn't care if they're liked or not, because Roger Goodell, I don't even think he's a real human. I think he's more just a robot. You better find someone like that. Pay him a lot of money, and then it better be worth it to them, because they can't have feelings. They just have to be void of emotion. And if you find them, hire them.